Everybody, thank you very much for joining me in this session today. This session will be about Data Protection Manager 2010 in the data center, and we're going to have a look on how it's actually working whenever we are protecting our servers or our workloads. My name is Mike. I'm a senior technical consultant, and I work for Infront Consulting. Before we start, let me just begin with asking you a few questions. And I'm going to try to have a look who is answering it, because with the lightning it's going to be difficult. But for you, for those in the room, which ones of you is the first time you actually hear about DPM or coming to a session of DPM? Only two. That's very good. I like that. That means many of you already have heard it. Who is actually using DPM 2007? I've got some more. All right. Who is using DPM 2010? Wow. This is great. Many people. Jason, you saw that? Many people. So to catch up to speed for those who didn't actually saw DPM yet or are still working with DPM 2007, let me just give a quick overview about DPM 2010. So on the left side of the screen, you see the different workloads that DPM can protect. We're talking about Exchange Server from 2003 till 2010, every SQL version out there, including 2008 R2, SharePoint, 2003, 2007, 2010, Dynamics, every Hyper-V or virtual server workload Microsoft has. We're also talking about plain file servers, Windows 2003 till Windows 2008, R2, and so on. We can protect Active Directory, we can protect system states, and which is not on the slide, but we can do that also, is bare metal recovery. And we can also protect clients, XPs, Vistas, and Windows 7. For those of you who are interested in that topic, you should certainly check out the session of Islam tomorrow, who's going to present an entire hour just on how to protect your clients, which will be a great session. All of these different workloads, they have one thing in common, VSS. And VSS is what we call the plumbing of DPM. The secret sauce, the Georgia peach in your dessert, if you want to. And VSS actually overcomes the challenge of getting the data protected in a consistent state. VSS is responsible for making sure that the data you are getting on your backups, whether it's to disk, to tape, or to the cloud, is going to be consistent, and they can actually recover all these files without any problems and get your data back. But VSS is also important for more than that. Well, we'll see that during the next hour. We will see more about all of these things that VSS does. Also very important to know is that DPM only has one agent. You deploy the agent, it comes on the server box, and it will figure out what kind of workload is running on that box. No SQL add-ons, no Exchange add-ons, no special things you need to do just to get your workloads protected. Just deploy the agent, attach it to the DPM server, he knows what it is, and you can start protecting. And also, with DPM, we're actually going to protect, we're going to back up data, and we're going to see the actual data on the DPM box. You will have real EDB files, VHDs, MDFs, stuff like that. You have the real files. So with that files, you can actually do alternative recoveries and start working again with your applications. Now, what do we do next then is, let's say up to every 15 minutes, we're going to replicate all the changes to the DPM box. And when I say replicate the changes, I really mean only the changes. We're only going to back up the entire data once, the initial replica. After that, the only thing that's going to be transferred to the DPM box are the changes. That's it. And if we look down further, we can protect that, and we're going to place all these files on disk, and we do disk-based recovery, or we can do it on tape, which is still the old school way, and many people still use, and is still valid these days. We can do more than that. We can also replicate that data to another DPM server, creating ourselves disaster recovery, and we'll go deeper in that by the end of the presentation. And we also have the opportunity to do it to the cloud with third-party vendors, partners of Microsoft, where you can actually place your data into the cloud so it's protected there. So what else do we got? On the agenda of today, so first we did a small overview, we did that. Then I will jump next immediately into a demo. We'll see how it's going to protect it, what we can choose, what different workloads, what options do we have depending on the workloads. And after that, when we get up to speed with all these little things, we're going to go deep dive and see how DPM really works. I'm going to try to explain to you how DPM expressful works, and I'm hoping I'll succeed in that. We're going to talk about how DPM replicates transactional applications. We're going to see how it works when we're talking about protecting virtual machines. We're going to also talk about colocation, and that's a pretty cool new feature in DPM 2010. Something you're really, really going to love if you're having a lot of data sources to protect. After that, we're going to talk about enterprise deployment. We're going to talk about scaling. We're going to talk about the new improvements in 2010 compared to 2007. And at the end, we'll have some time left for Q&A. And the good news is I have the product manager, the DPM god, with me on the first row, Jason Buffington. So any questions about licensing and stuff, you can ask him. Because I don't work for Microsoft, so I don't have an idea how licensing works at all. So let's just get ourselves started and go to the demo. All right. So here we have the DPM 2010 console. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a protection group. Here we go. This is our wizard. So we're going to choose what we're going to protect, servers or clients. As said, if you want to know about the clients, please come tomorrow to the session about client protection. And then we're going to select our servers, and we're going to see what kind of workload they are running on. Now, this will take some time, because it is actually enumerating and seeking on that server what is running there. And you see that there are already some servers that he has found. And let's say we take a simple file server. So I got recover VM. What I see here, I got all shares. If I would have had more shares, I would be able to protect those. I can do it old school, just select the volume entirely. Or I can go for system protection. And with system protection, I have two options, which is bare metal recovery. Get almost every data of that server in order to recover it entirely. Or just a system state, which you can use to recover those things. What else do we see? For example, this one, my SIM2 and so on, is my demo machine. It is running Hyper-V. It's a host. And you can see, for example, that I see the workload Hyper-V here. And I have different Hyper-V machines that I can protect. My Exchange server, my SQL, and so on. What else do we got? SQL. We have some SQLs. I have one SQL server. I have two instances on that SQL server. And look, this is one of the new features in DPM 2010, which is really cool. I have 3 databases. But who of you has these SQL instances that from time to time there are new databases on the instance? And of course, we're working in backup, so the SQL guys just don't tell us there are new databases, and we need to figure it out ourselves. A lot of nodding in, yeah, okay. This is our solution. We just select the instance. And every new database that comes into that instance, the next time there will be a backup, it will detect that there's a new database, do the initial replica, and hey, you're protected. Now that's a really cool feature. If you have these automatic growing instances and you have no idea what's happening, this is what it will solve that one. And I also have SharePoint. Who of you is using SharePoint? Whoa, again, a lot of people. Now, the issue with SharePoint is that it is kind of organic. It just grows. It can exist out of many servers. You have no idea how it looks like, what servers it's running on. With DPM, you actually don't have to care. All I see is one checkbox. I select it, and DPM will do the rest. How that works, I'll explain later after the demo, but it actually does do what it says it does. One checkbox, you have your entire farm, and you have protection. And you can recover the entire farm, you can do item level recovery, and so on. So what else do we got? Let's see, system protection, server 1. I can go to system state, including Active Directory. And so based on these different workloads, the DPM agent has discovered what workloads are running on the servers, and now I can start building up my protection group. And I'm going to select a few things here, so we have some data. I'm going to protect my Exchange database here. Maybe get me something on my volume. Let's see, I got something like recovery. I got the notification, meaning if I want to protect the system state of this computer, then I need to protect the system state and not just something on the C drive. But for now, I'll just do it like that. What else can we say? I'll take somewhere a backup of a Hyper-V. Here we go. And so on, and so on, and so on. And so I can create my protection group. Now, I'm not saying this is the smartest thing, taking all of your workloads into one protection group. But for the demo, stay with me, and we'll continue. All right. We give it a name. Demo tech at, I'm sure. And then we're going to choose what kind of protection do we want. Do we want short-time protection? Do we want long-term protection? I'm going to go, for this demo, with short-time protection to the disk, and also for long-term protection with a tape. So, because I've chosen Exchange database, some of my options in my wizard will change. And now I got my first question specifically for Exchange members, and he's going to ask me if I want to run SAUtil on the DPM box. And who of you here is an Exchange administrator? A few. Who of you knows that whenever the SAUtil runs after the backup, the load on the Exchange server can be painful? DPM will take that load to its server. So you don't have it anymore in your Exchange box, which I think is probably something you like. Nodding in, well, some of you, OK. If we have a DAG, we can also have some options to choose. So I will take one full backup of my mailbox database. And if I would have had a very large, bigger demo environment, I would be able to select other copies in the DAG within the backup. And then we're going to start selecting our short-term goals. And this is actually where you're going to decide, how about my data? And first, as I said, we start with disk, short-term protection. And with short-term protection, it's actually, what do I want so that I can recover it very, very quickly? Everybody knows tapes. If you need to recover, you need to load the tapes, take some time, and so on and so on. From the disk, it's very, very fast. So how long do you want to keep your data on a disk? And we can say, for example, we want that 14 days, something like that. The next question we have is, when do we want to do a synchronization? How frequent do we want to do that? Every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, 1 hour, 12 hours, and so on. Something we have to choose. Now, the synchronization is very important for the transaction workloads, SQL, Exchange, because, and we'll see that a little bit more later, very deep dive, it will just synchronize the closed log files. That's what it does. And then we're going to create the timings for our file recovery points. For file members, and I want, for example, that I can recover files at 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, things like that. But you can easily add your own schedules. You can say, I don't care about Sunday because nobody works on Sunday. Well, we're all in IT, so probably we sometimes work on Sunday, but you can choose your own schedule here. And the other thing which is very important are the express full backups. And the express full backups you can actually see as a full backup. From the old legacy backup solutions, this is the moment we're going to actually store on the DPM box a full backup. Now, it is not exactly the same. That's why it's not called a full backup, but an express full backup. Because I said, first time we do the replica, entire database to DPM server. The second time it will do an express full backup, only the changes. So it doesn't do the full database again. But these are the timings you choose. And again, you can choose whenever you want based on your own schedule. Okay. And now it's going to calculate how many disk space you need. And one of the great options, and keep that in mind, I will come back to that in the end of the presentation, is co-locate data in DPM storage pool. And those who are still working with DPM 2007 and don't have that are really, really going to be enthusiastic about it. Who of you ever opened the volume maps on your DPM server? A few. And then you see all the volumes, like an entire zipper. Co-location will be the answer to that. You got a question?
Co-location did exist in 2007, but just tapes.
Okay, but the co-location I'm talking about here is about the disk. But you're right, it was on the tapes. Cool. So, I'm going to modify a bit here because basically I'm running out of disk space on my machine, which I probably won't be able to do. Kind of selected too much. Calculate. No. Sorry? Yeah. I'll just do this. Then I have enough storage on my machine. Another great feature is automatically grow the volumes. And now all those who are still using 2007 say, whenever a backup has failed and you get the notification out of disk space, what you need to do as an administrator, you need to log in, grow the volumes, and redo the backup. 2010, we have the option to choose, no, automatically grow the volumes. Do it for me. I will do it anyway afterwards. Why not do it and rerun the backup for me? Which is a very good feature. The only thing you have to do as administrator is run a report from time to make sure that you're not running out of disk space on your storage. But that's it. And then again, we're going to get the long-term goals, and then we're going to talk about tapes. What is my retention range? Now, 3 months is maybe not enough, considering some of these laws you have here in the States, so 7 years maybe. What's the frequency of the backup? And you can modify your entire backup schedule to your needs. The next thing I can do is choose my library, and since everything here is virtual, running demonstration, I kind of have a virtual tape library. It's FireStreamer with one drive, and I can actually choose whether I want to check the data integrity of my backup, which takes a little bit more time, and I can also choose to compress my data, to encrypt my data, or something like that. And finally, I can choose what I'm going to do with the replication, the first replica. And let's say you have somewhere an exchange farm and it's about 40, 50 terabyte large. You probably don't want to do the replication during the day, during production hours, at this moment. So you can schedule it to do it later. That's an option. Or if your DPM box is in an off-site location, you can actually decide to do it manually. Take the files from your production box, ship it on USB, hard drive, whatever you want, upload it manually, and then do the initial synchronization so you got the exact replica on both sides. And this is also great. Who, from 2007, the ones from 2010, hopefully don't have it anymore, frequently, it happens, get the alert, we think it is inconsistent. Do you want to run a consistency check? Now you can actually let DPM decide itself. DPM will figure out, I think there could be a problem. But my administrator has told me, no problem, just do it whenever you think you're inconsistent, and then it runs. Or you can just do it daily, according to a specific schedule. Finally, we got our summary. We review everything, and we can say create group, and now everything will work. And it will start creating my replicas, it will take my schedules, and it will do everything I need, my backups. Okay. So I'm going back to my slides. So this was a short view of how we create protection groups and what the different options are. And now we're really going to look at what is actually happening beneath all of this and what we need to know whenever we're protecting data. Okay. First thing, yeah.
What is the significance of the 512 threshold on distance?
Okay. Hold that question. I'm going to answer it during the presentation. Cool. So, we'll start with the express full backup. So again, let's compare this to a normal backup of a legacy backup application, but without getting the data each time shipped. Very important. Okay. So as we have seen, I just selected the SharePoint during the demo. And then it's up to DPM to actually find all the files that make up the farm, whatever you called your farm. But it will be DPM that will figure out what the hell is behind the scenes. So it figures that out, and in this case, I have 2 servers running a total of 5 content databases. Now, remember that I said that if you go for a SQL instance and you select the entire instance, that it automatically will add the new databases? Well, the same thing can happen with SharePoint. There are new content databases. DPM is smart enough to actually find the new databases after it does a synchronization or a backup. So what then happens is that DPM is going to identify the blocks that compose the file. Or in other words, it's going to identify the different blocks that make up the files that make up the data. You're still with me? Let's take as an example SQL database. I got some files. It will see the blocks that makes the different files that are the entire database. And it will create out of that a bitmap, a volume map. So every block on that volume map actually represents a block on the file system. And now that we know what is actually needs to be protected, and we start working on it during the day, you see that there are different blocks that are being changed. And what DPM does at that moment is on the volume map, it will flip a bit. 0 to 1. Hey, this has changed. This has changed. And so on, and so on, and so on, until it's time to do the backup. Now, this actually solves a problem. Who of you has an environment with, let's say, a server that has about 500 terabytes of data, or even 200 terabytes of, yeah. Sometimes you can have the problem with older backup solutions that they're going to check at the moment of backup what has changed, and then, well, in worst case, the server goes down. Best case, it's only the backup server that goes down. DPM, from the moment it gets to the backup point, it will know what has changed because it has the volume map and the bits are flipped, which is a good thing. So it doesn't need to check anymore what the hell is all changed. Okay, so we're keeping an eye on box. Things are getting changed, and we're getting there. So it's time to do a backup. So VSS, our plumbing, will take a snapshot on the production and will actually tell me what kind of change blocks we need to send over to the DPM server. Now, it is a transmission. It goes to a different server. So the issue here could be that in the transmission something goes wrong and we don't have the same order anymore. Now, because it is VSS and it actually freezes the blocks, it doesn't matter. We just take the replica and apply the changed blocks on it. And here we have the freeze. So at that moment, while it's doing the transmission and it's applying it, we actually have the exact same thing as we have on the production server. Now, in the meantime, of course, the servers are not stopping. People are still working. Because it has frozen only the blocks that have changed, file input-output can just continue to work. It will just not happen on those frozen blocks. And from the moment it got the notification from, OK, everything is cool, we took the backup, you can just continue, the different box will be released, and we can continue with our work doing it on the same way. And again, we will have the volume bitmap that will keep the changes. All right. Now, that is only part of the story, because that is the express full. But everything that has got transactional logs, we can actually do more. Remember when I showed you, you had the express full backup schedule, 3 times a day, once a week, but we also had the synchronization. Now let's go a little bit deeper into that. So we have our first replica, and in this slide, let's say it's day 0, it's midnight, and we take the replica. So baseline, initial mirror, first copy, everything comes over. We got a replica on the DPM box. And then we have a synchronization window. And in these examples, I will use every 1 day at midnight, we'll do an express full backup. And everything else, every 15 minutes, we'll do the transaction logs, the synchronization. Okay? So every 15 minutes, we're going to ship the closed logs to the DPM server. Now, those that used to working with SQL or Exchange or something like that will say, okay, you got your replica. You just apply the transactional logs on it, and you got, again, the same situation as the production server. No. That would be log shipping. And whether we have CCR, SCR, DAG, or any other of these replication methods, like we have mirroring also and log shipping, that is something which exists for high availability. The production goes down, but we're doing mirroring, so the second one can take over. DPM doesn't do that. DPM is about backup. I'm the backup guy. I'm staying in -2 somewhere in the basement of a large building, doing my thing with the backups. And if somebody needs me, I'll recover the data, and I've saved the day, if I get the remark of my manager that they did a great job. So we don't do that. DPM is actually, I call it my final fortress. When everything else has failed, DPM is there to rescue it. That's the idea. So no high availability, backup. So I'm actually just taking all the logs and shipping it to the replica. And I do that every 15 minutes. Now, if I want to recover a certain point in time, a 15-minute point in time, what I'm going to do, I'm going to restore the database, day 0, midnight, and then do a roll forward with the transaction logs. That's all I'm going to do. It's going to be automatic. It's not going to be done by you, but it will do it. Now, normally this is the time that I get a question, yeah, but can you recover to any point in time? The answer to that is no, I can't. Remember, backup guy, basement? But the SQL guy, he can. Because in DPM we have the option to recover the database with the log files and leave it like that. Don't apply it. So then we have the SQL guy, who are, of course, much smarter than I am, and they can do roll forwarding until that one point. So can we do it automatically? No. Can the SQL guy do it? Yes. But we automatically, we can just do 15 minutes. All right. Jason, do you want to answer that question?
Does SQL break log shipping? Let me repackage the question first. Yeah. As a general rule of thumb, you never want two different things to work with your log files, because here's what happens. When log shipping happens, it ships its version of logs and then it trunks them so that it knows where to pick up from next time. And if you have any backup software, DPM or otherwise, that's also working with the log files, what those backup applications will typically do, including DPM, is it'll handle what it wants to in the logs, and then it will trunk it. So now you've got this pattern that happens where DPM does its part, it trunks. Then log shipping does its part, it trunks. Back and forth and back and forth. And it turns out when everything's over, neither one of you have enough data to actually be meaningful. So to the answer to your question, DPM does not break log shipping. In fact, if you are doing this behavior and DPM sees that you're doing it on a database which is log shipping, we actually disable our function. So we won't touch your logs if the logs are actually in a log shipping state. So what will happen is, in fact, this is a good reason to do two different protection groups, where you have one set of protection groups that's running in simple mode or otherwise using log shipping, and you'll use a different protection group for those that you actually want to do the incrementals every 15 minutes.
All right. Thank you, Jason. I'm so happy I didn't have to answer that one. Now, let's oh, sorry, you have another question?
In a SharePoint environment, when you back up a SharePoint environment, does DPM actually do truncation of the logs on the content database?
Okay. Well, with SharePoint, it is not exactly a transactional application. So we're not doing that, because the only thing we can do with SharePoint are express fools. If you protect the entire farm, the only thing you can do is express fools. So.
Which means you have to manually go in and do a shrink or some committed to sync simple.
No, but I'll let Jason take this one also.
Let me take one more, and then, and I know you've got lots of other good stuff we want to make sure we cover.
I've got some time,
Two things. One, DPM does not trunk logs of any application. The application does. DPM as a well-behaved backup application will tell the app, you have just been backed up, do what you do when a backup has successfully occurred. So then the application actually does the trunking. And that's true for whether it's Exchange or SQL, et cetera. In the case of SharePoint, when you're using SharePoint's VSS writer, we don't get a view into the transaction logs of the SQL databases that are underneath them. So what will happen is we back up the databases as a whole using the express full part of the method for now. And then afterwards, again, we notify SharePoint that a successful backup has been done of the database, and then it does whatever it does to manage its process from there, including log truncation.
Thank you. All right. Can we keep the rest of the questions a little bit later so I can thank you? All right. Now let's go a little bit further. So this was all day one. Something went wrong. We got the database back, and we did the rule forwarding with the transaction loss. Now, I said every day I take an express full. So again, at midnight, I'm going to take an express full. Day one, midnight, express full. So take the express full, only the block level changes going to the replica. But at the same time, I'm keeping the shadow copy of day 0, 12 o'clock, and I get to keep all the logs. And again, if I want to recover somewhere day 1 at a 15-minute point in time, oh, this is the animation for the backup. So now let's do the recovery. We restore the replica again from day 1, and we do the roll forwarding to, let's say, 2:15. Now what if I actually want to recover to day 0 at 10:45? So what DPM then is going to do is going to take the shadow copy of day 0, 12 o'clock, and do the roll forwarding of the transaction logs that I still have until 10:45. And this can continue for day 2, day 3, day 4, and so on. Okay. Now let's do some maths here. And I'm very bad at maths, but that's why I wrote it on the slide. You can have up to 512 shadow copies. That's the limitation. So plus all the log files. And if you look at marketing, Microsoft and stuff, so I'm not saying you should do that, you should at least take 1 express full every week. So that means we can have 512 weeks express fulls times 7 days, times 24 hours, times 4, because every hour we're going to take 4 times all the transaction logs. That means that in total we would be able to have 344,000 recovery points, which is huge, a lot. Now, I did a calculation just before I came here, and that's over 9 years of data on your disk. Now, if any of you ever has been to the Jason Buffington session, he will tell you that there are 3 reasons why you don't want to do this. 1, it will be a lot of disk. 2, Microsoft just don't want you to have SQL 2008 in 9 years further. They want you to upgrade to the newer versions. And 3, it's a lot of disk, and I mean a lot of disk. So maybe that's not a good idea. Now, if you have this possibility, because you have all these 15 minutes logs anyway, why would you take more frequent a full express? Anybody wants to try out the answer here? And know the first row and the MVPs of DPM? No, you're not allowed. Those who can guess the answer gets a book, and Jason will sign it after the session. No, you're not allowed. Thank you very much. Yes, faster restore. Because basically, what is happening, if you have to do the recovery of Friday, you took a replica on Friday, and then have to do log forwarding until the next week, Thursday, 12 o'clock, it will take a lot of time. So in order to speed up that recovery process, you will want to take faster a full express book. Get your book after the session and make sure that he signs it. Great. His phone number, I'm not sure he's going to give, but... Okay. Now, data co-location. And I told you this is something really exciting. In 2007, what the basic idea was, each data source would get 2 volumes on the DPM server. The replica volume and the shadow copy volume. It holds the changes. Now, let's say you have somewhere a protection group with like 5 databases, which is not a lot. These are 5 data sources, meaning you already have 10 volumes. Now let's take this a little bit further, and we have somewhere a protection group that's, or just a DPM server, that has around 300 data sources, meaning we start with 600 volumes. But, you know, your environment is growing, business is doing well, so your data is growing, and it needs to extend a bit, and you get some organic growth of your volumes. And remember I told you about the zipper effect, so, and we have 600 protections, and it goes to 800, to 900, to 1,000, oops, stop. DPM just stops working. Well, actually not DPM. It's not DPM we can blame, it's NTFS. It isn't built for this. Now, in the defense of NTFS, who wants to have a server with 1,000 volumes on it? I mean, C, D, E, F. You can go very far in that. But this was the initial idea of DPM. The problem was what they saw in 2007. Large DPM box, many data sources, and stop. They had an issue. To resolve that, they kind of invented co-location. And what you're actually going to do is, per data type, they're going to create 1 replica volume and 1 shadow copy volume. And that solves that problem. Now, it's not yet for every data type. Not every data type can handle this co-location for the moment. I'm sure they're already working on it in the next version. But for this moment, it's not yet possible. But this is a really cool feature. 1, you won't get the zipper effects into your server, which made it kind of impossible to just open your volume manager anyway. It would crash. And 2, you can't hit the limit of 1,000 volumes. So this is a really good feature. And those who are still on 2007, think about this feature. Use it to get yourself upgraded to 2010 as soon as possible. Now let's talk a little bit about virtual machines. And we're going to talk about Hyper-V here.
Can I ask a question on that? Were those 2 things symmetric, the left and the right, shadow copy the other one? Like if the replica's gone, can you fully recover from the shadow copy?
If the replica, let me get straight. If the replica is gone, can I fully recover from the shadow copy volume?
Right. And I'm just asking, since the left and the right side have 2 different names, are they asymmetric when they're different? And the right side on the shadow depends on the left-hand side, or is it just 2 different names for the same thing?
Well, first, if the replica volume is gone for some reason, you probably have an issue. And I don't think you're able to recover from the shadow copy. The second thing, the reason why different names, I have to get back to you on that question because I actually have no idea. Jason will take that one.
All right, so basically the way the DPM plumbing works, the replica volume stores the live set of data. So let's say that you've got a data file which is 8 blocks wide, whatever that file happens to be. The replica file will hold those 8 blocks. Then the next day happens and you change 2 of those blocks. What happens is the 2 blocks that you changed, those update within the 8 blocks of the replica. So the replica is still 8 blocks wide. It just has the most current data. The 2 blocks that got displaced, the old data, those old 2 blocks are now stored in the shadow copy volume. Okay, another day happens, you change 3 more blocks, those 3 blocks will across. So the replica volume always holds the complete set of data 8 blocks wide, or whatever size the file is. In the shadow copy, you'd have 2 blocks from the first set of changes, you'd have 3 blocks from the next set of changes, etc. The shadow copy only holds the block level deltas going backwards. That's how we reconstitute points in time.
Okay, I got it. Then a quick follow-up. You do provide some other mechanism to give geographic diversity, right? Like the second Datacenter.
Okay, that is
Yeah,
something that I will talk about and a little bit later, one of the last slides. I'll come back to that. Yeah, cool. All right, so virtual machines, Hyper-V. Now, before I go into Hyper-V, let me first give you a general overview of how VSS actually works. So, to begin with, we have a VSS requester. In my case, it's going to be the DPM agent. And that DPM agent is going to be there, going to say, hey, it's time for your backup. I need data. So it's going to tell that to the VSS provider. And the VSS provider is something that's lying somewhere on the storage level. It can be a hardware provider, it can also be a software provider, right? Now, it does do the question to the VSS provider, and then the VSS provider will talk to the VSS writer. And that VSS writer is specific depending on your workload. You got one for SQL, you got one for Exchange, for example. So the VSS provider will just say to the VSS writer, hey guys, I just got a request here, I need data, do your thing to give me a consistent backup and to make sure that the production keeps running, whatever you need to do, do it. So the VSS writer does his thing, does his work. Here we go. And gives back the data to the VSS provider and gives it back finally to the DPM agent that ships it to the DPM box. Finished. That's the general overview of VSS. Now with Hyper-V, the game is a little bit changing. We still have the VSS requester, our agent. We'll still talk to a provider on the host level, where we have a DPM agent. But then that provider cannot talk to, for example, the SQL database that is running into one of its guests, because then it could, cross some security boundaries and things that is not allowed to. Now here's the good news. Because we have the integration components within Hyper-V, we actually can do the entire workflow, requester, provider, writer, again. So we're going to kind of do it double. First, on the outside, host level. And then when we do the request, when the provider says to the writer, hey, do your thing, the integration component is going to start the entire thing again. So he's going to do the request, go to the VSS provider inside the guest will talk to the SQL writer and say, hey, give me a backup, and so on and so on. So the data will come and go through the entire cycle again and finally be on the DPM box. Now, there's a little catch on that, because we kind of have an inner shadow copy or backup and an outer backup. There probably be some little delay between it. In this case, it's something like 24 seconds. And that means we don't have a good backup, because that means we're actually backing up our entire virtual machine. But inside, I have something which is actually a few seconds before. And if we recover, that could maybe cause issues. Now, the way they're going to solve that is like this. So what you're actually going to do is those 24 seconds, you're going to figure out what it is, and you're going to remove the junk. Just throw it away. So that we have a consistent state, and that those 24 seconds are gone, and that the outer side matches the inner side, and then take that one and send it to the backup server. And that's how they fix it. This is a bit how VSS works with Hyper-V. When it's done, it's been cleaned up, and you have again a backup that you can use to recover. That means you actually can back up an entire VHD, restore it at a certain point to the same Hyper-V server, to an alternate Hyper-V server, to another cluster, whatever you want, start it, and actually have a server with SQL inside running with database, with the information of the moment you took the backup, which will give you a great disaster recovery scenario. But hold that thought for a second until I'm a little bit further. Now let's talk a bit about DPM in the enterprise. And this was one of the questions. We have all these workloads. In this picture, we have a file server, we have a SQL database and Exchange, stuff like that. And we're protecting it with a DPM server. And the DPM server will have a schedule every 4 hours, express full backup, some synchronization, and so on and so on. Now what we can do is actually we can take that DPM server and protect it by a second DPM server. And this makes it very interesting. First, your production workloads will not be touched again. It's actually the second DPM server that will take everything from the first DPM server. And it will have one-click failover and failback. Let's say in a scenario that the first DPM server just dies, whatever the reason is. Then you actually can go to the secondary DPM server, say, hey, let's do a failover, and it will take the backup from there. Meaning it will connect straight to your production servers so that they keep being protected. After you have recovered the first DPM server, you can just do the failback and everything is back to normal. We have some more features. You can have different schedules per DPM server. As I said, first DPM server every 4 hours, every 15 minutes. But maybe the second DPM server is somewhere offsite and your WAN connection is not that good to do it every 15 minutes and so on. So you can take different schedules. Once a day, after production hours, when the line is open. For example, something you have to figure out. It has chaining support. So we can actually say we have DPM A that will be protected by DPM B, and DPM will be protected by DPM C, and DPM C will actually be protected again by DPM A. Or you can have other scenarios. You have DPM A, B, C, D that are all protected to one somewhere in the main office, for example, DPM E. So you kind of get a lot of options to create an entire disaster recovery process. And the good thing is, look at this picture. I don't have no tapes anymore at my primary DPM server. I will do my tape backup on my secondary, meaning I have offsite tapes, and I don't need to give these tapes to the guy in the truck that probably loses them anyway. They're already offsite, so if the main production site goes away, I can start recover because I still have everything offsite. And it's actually possible. You can restore servers directly from the offsite DPM server. So whatever happens with the primary DPM and all the production servers there, you can start recovering from your offsite location, which is a great way to build an entire disaster recovery scenario. What about scalability? There were a lot of questions about scalability when we're talking about DPM 2007. But one DPM server, 2010, can protect around 100 protection servers, 2,000 SQL Server databases, 25 terabytes of SharePoint farms with over 1 million of objects, and 40 terabytes of Exchange storage groups. And with the latest QFE, you can actually protect 3,000 Windows clients at this moment, which is quite a lot. Now, this is not AND. Just to make that clear, it's OR. Would be great, though. One server, 100 servers, 3,000 clients, and so on. And again, it will also vary a bit. I mean, if you're going to protect 100 production servers, but they all have like 100 terabytes of data, that probably won't work. So it's kind of, but stay with me with this slide. You have to calculate anyway whenever you're going to design your DPM server. What about reliability? Those still using 2007? Yeah. No automatic protection of SQL instances. No automatic rerunning of the jobs and self-healing. If something goes wrong, the administrator needs to go check and do the thing. With DPM 2010, we kind of have an engine that will do an automatic rerunning of the jobs and try to self-heal itself. Automatic growing of your storage if you want to. I showed you that checkbox. Less inconsistent replicas error and the possibility to check it itself. And much less alert in your monitoring on the DPM console. There are also the management packs. Who of you is using Operations Manager? Actually, less than DPM. I like this. I'm going to tell this to my boss. He's not going to like it. But those who are using Operations Manager can actually download the DPM 2007 and DPM 2010 management pack and get all the alerts inside it. And for those who are really, really excited about the next version, DPM 2012, make sure you come have a look at the booth. Microsoft will be there. You can have a sneak preview. You can also do a hands-on lab on DPM 2012, or just come tomorrow to Jason's session and see all the new goodies that there will be in DPM 2012, which is going to be a great version. Now, some resources for you. The websites, we have the Datacenter. We have some forums who are some great people from Microsoft and a lot of MVPs and smart guys that actually answer a lot of these questions. You also have my blog, skunk.be/blogs. That's a System Center user group in Belgium. You have a great community blog for scdpmonline.org. Some email addresses, but you'll get the slides. You'll be able to download them. I have a question over there, yeah?
Does it handle Team Foundation server?
Well, actually, Team Foundation server, if I'm not mistaken, exists. Sorry? OK. I'm going to answer in DPM 2010. So it exists out of a SQL database. And if you read on the TechNet website, then you know what you need to protect. And then you can add that more or less manually. Now, I just hear, which is actually new to me, that TFS will be fully supported in 2012, which will be probably, again, a one-click solution or something like that. OK, more DPM this week. So today was SCDPM in the data center. Tomorrow we have protecting client data with DPM 2010, given by Islam. And we also have the first look at DPM 2012 session. We have the hands-on labs. And we also have some great people standing at the booth for more questions. Now, I'm not yet going to end. I'm very sorry about that, but I'm going to go for some more demos. One of the things many people ask me, and I have some inactive protection from previous demos, so I'll use that one, is about recovery. So we had this SharePoint. And what about item level recovery? So you will see that I actually can browse through it and select one of these websites or files or whatever these things are within SharePoint. Again, I'm just the DPM guy, the backup guy. SharePoint, it's something I drop files on, that's it. But you're actually going to be able to recover item level. Certainly, if you SharePoint 2010 will make your life easier. And in 2012, it will even be much quicker, even more than it is already. So, but this, you can actually choose. Let's say we're going for a mailbox. Or let's say I just go for a SQL database. I'll select one of my databases. Select a date. Here we go. And if somebody wants to count the clicks, how long it takes for me to recover, I say recover. If it wants to start. This is always great with demos. Need to wait. Here we go. So I do next. I get some options. I can recover to the original SQL server, just overwrite the database. I can recover to another instance. Oh, by the way, do you know that DPM 2010 can actually recover from a 2005 SQL to a 2008 SQL server, which gives you a great testing scenario for getting your databases to newer version. And remember what Microsoft said, they don't want you 9 years with the same SQL. I think that's why they built it in. You can also copy it to a network fog, and then you're actually just going to give you what you ask, the files and the log files if you're taking a certain point in time. Or you can copy it to tape, and this is actually built in for who of you has from time to time these annoying auditors that come and ask you for data of 2 months ago? Nobody? Nobody has audited here? Wow. You're all lucky guys. Well, if you're like me and you get from time to time an auditor that says, hey, I need to know if you still have the data of 3 years ago, maybe a little bit long, of 3 days ago, 3 months ago, can you give me a tape? Now, what I don't want to do is actually go to my tapes, take one tape out, and give that to the auditor, because basically he will be away with the tapes, and it will take like a few months before I get them back, and I have an empty slot in my tapes. So what I can do now is recover to a tape, and he also has his data. But now I'm just going to recover to the original SQL server, and this is what I was talking about. Leave it operational, or leave it non-operational, and give the SQL admin the option to restore additional transaction logs. I'll just leave it operational. If we would have had SAN, we could do, but demo machine, never mind about that. It gives me the summary, what I'm going to restore. And if I would have had the log files, you would actually see this, all the different log files. And it's kicking off. That's it. Anybody did the count? Neither did I, so I think around 7, something like that. And it's just recovering, and you will see that's quite fast. Okay. Okay. Could you, if it's possible, come up? Yeah, because basically then it's also on the recording, and then we have it for the other people that will look afterwards. So the mics are in the middle. There's one in the front and one in the back. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, it didn't seem to be turned on when I tried it.
So,
Is that mic on? Okay.
so will DPM eventually have single message restores for Exchange, or is it still going to be the restore the entire database and then go in Exchange and find it? And
Well, first let me say this. I'm not going to talk about other backup solutions, but actually a backup solution that promise you it can do item level recovery is actually not supported. The Exchange team is quite strict about the rules of the database. If you want to do item level recovery, that means they need to have the database, you need to have to do some PowerShell commands and so on. It is the only supported way. If you have a solution that tells you can do item level recovery, something fails, you call Microsoft support and say, sorry, please read very well. So it's not DPM, it's what the Exchange team actually tells them they can do. So SharePoint said, yes, you can do item level recovery like this. DPM listened to it and used it to do it fully automated. The Exchange team said, no, we do not support it. You can do that until that point, but then it's the Exchange admins that will take the PowerShell commands or whatever tools they have to recover the item level. So we'll probably stay with that one. Any other questions? Yes?
If you're in 2010 and you've created a protection group and you don't have co-location turned on, can you go back and modify that and turn that on?
No, actually you can't. Now what you can do then, and oh, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. Oh, it's already done. What you actually can do is, you see that I have some here inactive protection. And I know it's maybe not the best solution, but what you can do then is stop the protection of the group, but retain the data. And let me see if I can show it here. Stop the protection of the group, and then retain the protected data. Meaning that as long as you have your schedule, you still will be able to recover from that data. The inactive data will go away the moment your schedule, which you have chosen for the protection group, has been passed. And then you just recreate the protection group with the correct options on the same data sources, and then you have your co-location. Yes? Now you.
I actually got a question concerning reporting.
Reporting?
Concerning reporting.
Yes.
I mean, one of my responsibilities every week is pulling tapes and shipping them off-site. But I do daily tape backups, which means I've got about 80 Exchange tapes a week.
Okay.
Reporting is not, from what I've been able to figure out, reporting is not great to tell me which tapes I just ran, because I can go in and tell me what tapes I've got today. But at midnight, that goes away.
Okay. All right. So first, the good news. Reporting will be much better soon. To solve your problem now, and Jason, could you close your ears for a second? Fantastic. Thank you. It is a database in DPM. It contains all the data. So if you have some cool, great, fantastic SQL reporting guy, and now I am speaking, and Jason, yeah, you can open your ears again. That's the best answer I can give you. All right, there was another question? Yeah.
Is there would there be co-location with DPM and other tape devices, or does DPM still have to have proprietary control over the tape device?
I thought that was not the case, but I'll leave that question to Jason again. Or I must be really, really mistaken here.
So I think the question is, does DPM need to have unilateral control over a tape device, or can you actually share it? That's actually pretty endemic of most of the backup industry, because there's not normally a method by which multiple backup vendors are going to want to create that technology to share at a drive level. In some cases, depending on the drive and who's actually managing the robotics, you might have the option of having being able to share a silo, but having different farms of tapes. But there's not normally an impetus to go ahead and have two different competing backup technologies write the collaborative code so that they could actually share at a tape drive level. That's pretty endemic of most backup solutions.
Okay.
My second question
Yeah.
is in 2010, do you still need a recovery farm for shipping?
Well, the answer to that for SharePoint 2007, yes. It's the way SharePoint works. It's the way the SharePoint team gave it. This is how it works. For 2010, no. Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you can only use express backup for SharePoint.
Yeah.
And what is the schedule that is supported for full express backup? Because I can imagine that it takes some time to write the backup catalog for the single item backup even. If you have a large SharePoint implementation with hundreds of millions of items, I can imagine that you can't schedule it that often.
Okay, so the question is, if I have a very, very large SharePoint farm, I can't actually schedule many, many express full backups.
I don't know. It's a question.
Okay.
How can you do it? Can I do it once an hour, or is it not supported, or does it never finish to write the backup catalog? Or?
It is possible. It is perfectly possible. Remember that we said the express full backups. Okay, the first initial replica will, if you have this large SharePoint file, will be difficult, but then it's only the block level changes. So whether we have 1 million files, if they all change within 15 minutes or within the hour, then maybe it could become an issue. But if that isn't the case, and that's probably not the case, it's only the blocks that are changed that will be sent.
I'm not talking about the blocks that you have to replicate. Yeah? So to support a single item restore, you have to have a catalog with all the hundreds of
Okay,
items in it.
yeah.
And I assume that it will take some time to write that catalog or to update that catalog.
Okay,
That's dependent on replicating the blocks.
yes. Let me put it like this way. Let's say you have an item that stands in a database of 1 terabyte. You're completely right, because you're going to recover that 1 terabyte and then in the back end get that 1 file out of it. So that's a lot of overhead for just that file. Remember again, this is DPM, your last resort. Think about SharePoint. You can have versioning, you can have a trash can, stuff like that. But yes, it takes some time. Now here's new good news. DPM 2012 will solve that problem of the 1 terabyte that needs to go first recovery. So, but you will hear that tomorrow in that session. Let me get you first. You're not allowed to ask a question.
Maybe I just misheard, but did you say if you do a Hyper-V backup of a server that's running SQL and restore the DHD, the SQL database is consistent?
Yes, I actually said that. And yes, it is true. Now, if you go a little bit further on that one, you take, let's say, once a week a Hyper-V backup, and then the thing crashes on Thursday, which you take the backup on Friday, then you lose like a week of data, so your manager probably won't be happy. You can also at the same time then place an agent inside the guest do the host level backup, so you got the VHDs and some XML files and stuff of Hyper-V, and take the 15-minute points on SQL, meaning that in a disaster recovery scenario, you place the VHD back, bam, and then place the latest data with the SQL backup. And because you place the VHD back, which holds the DPM agent, which has the same name, which will reconnect to your DPM server, then you can do the workload recovery, and you're back in action with the latest data, which gives you actually a full bare metal recovery, including the latest workloads. So that could be a great scenario. Also think about when you need to test your restores every once a week. Since I said you can restore to alternative Hyper-V, means, and then think again, DPM primary, DPM secondary, you go to the secondary, you could recover from there to another Hyper-V host. Then you do the workload recovery, and you've tested your environment, your backups, whether they're working without actually touching the production environment. And you know if something goes wrong with the production environment, that you can do it because you just proved it on the other side. So it gives you a lot of power. Yes?
But in that scenario, will you run into problems with the database names or instance names being the same if you try to actually bring that box up after you restore it for your test?
Okay. Yeah, first when you do a Hyper-V recovery, it will stay off. Yeah. I know you have the same name, so the moment you do that test, you actually also will need to do an AD recovery. So you get the domain controller, which is immediately a great test because that's like a very dangerous workload, and then kind of separate it from your production environment. Yeah. Yes?
So as you know that actually DBAs, they like to back up their SQL using the SQL because they feel freedom of restoring and recovering.
Yeah.
So if now when I'm going to back up their SQL with DPM, is it going to log them out? They will never have this freedom again? Can they?
I wish I could say yes, but no. There is a self-service recovery tool specifically for SQL admins, which you can do role-based authentication and roles on it, so they can recover their own databases.
So he won't lose his feature?
He won't lose his feature, but then the DPM admin just goes again to the basement and sits there. Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah, great session, Michael. But I was
Thank
just
you.
kind of curious if anyone had been playing around with this in the pilots to automate some of the backups.
Okay, that's a very good question. DPM also has an integration pack for Opales, or for System Center Orchestrator, as we have to call it. And you can actually do many, many great things with that integration pack. One of the things, for example, which I actually used with a customer is they have a production database, and they have also a test environment and a develop environment. And what's the problem with developers? They are developing on a database which has this phony data inside. Test user 1, test user 2, living there. They're not really testing on real data. What they wanted, which we did with Orchestrator, is actually we take the backups with DPM of the production database. And every morning at 6 o'clock, we did a recovery to another SQL server, the developer database. So every morning, the developers came in, and they actually had real-life data where they could do their testing and programming and stuff like that. And you can think of many scenarios with Orchestrator. You can automate restores of Exchange, Hyper-V, things like that. And I'm pretty sure that in the new Orchestrator and the new IPs that are coming, there are actually going to be much more scenarios within Orchestrator. Actually, we did a session at MMS together with some Microsoft people, and they kind of built an entire workflow in Orchestrator that with one touch, they recovered an entire data center to another site, because the first one just burned down. It was a great scenario. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Can I first?
We recently had some issues regarding recovering of DPM and SQL databases.
Yes.
And as a result of that, our customer wants to evaluate the backups on a monthly, weekly, daily basis.
Yeah.
Something you need to do anyway, but is Orchestrator therefore the given tool, or is there another tool for it?
It could be, yeah. You can also do it with PowerShell, but let's not make our lives difficult. But we could do it with Orchestrator, yeah. To do testing to somewhere offline location, yeah. That would be great.
I have two questions about the Hyper-V backups.
Yeah.
Earlier, when you were choosing the Hyper-V VHDs as data sources,
Mhm.
They're showing up as two different.
Okay.
One's the same state, one's the snapshot.
Mhm. Yeah.
What's the difference between the two, and does that have any impact on how it's stored?
Yes. So there are two ways of protecting. One is actually the great way, which we can actually do the protection of the VHD live. It doesn't need to stop. It just keeps running because it has the integration components and everything is working and so on. Now let's say you have a non-Microsoft operating system running on your Hyper-V. You also want to back up that Hyper-V, that VHD. You want that because, well, it's your production. Now, the issue here is it doesn't have the same integration components and actually no VSS. So you're kind of in a problem. So what you can do then is do a backup, which was the other option, which I'm not remembering for the moment, a saved state, I think, saved state. And there it's actually going to pause the machine, take the snapshot, so the VHD stays consistent, and then release it again. So that is something, if you have the choice of backup using saved state, then you know that it can't do it online, and you need to make sure, think about it, that you're not doing it in the middle of the day somewhere. Well, you're allowed, but you know, maybe not the best option.
And a second question.
Sure.
I know earlier this year it was a hotfix release to fix a problem with Hyper-Vs on CSP. That was shared by multiple nodes that are in a cluster, a host cluster.
Yeah.
Are we absolutely sure that's working parallel backup-wise?
Okay, so if you're going to do parallel backups, make sure that you have the hardware VSS provider. If you don't have that, then you need to serialize, because otherwise it will probably kill your CSV. But yes, it will solve your problems. So make sure always that you have the latest QFE, because that also fixes some issues that there were. Not that many, but there were a few. And yes, it will work. Lately, we have done a lot of implementations on pretty large CSV clusters, and it works very well with the hardware VSS provider. The moment you can't have it because, well, or it doesn't work, or the vendor just say, I do not give it to you, then you need to go with the software VSS, this default, DPM, but don't paralyze, because that could kill your network, actually. Yeah. So if there are more questions, please stop by the booth, but I have to keep an eye on my timing. We'll be there tonight, tomorrow, the day after. I'll probably be there the entire day. You can also use the different email addresses that you saw on the slides. I'm not promising I'll reply in 24 hours, but I'll do my best to do it in 2 or 3 days. Kind of have sometimes I need to work for my boss. So, but anyway, your questions will be answered, and I'll do my best. So with that, I should go back to this, and then hopefully the clicker still works, which it doesn't. Okay, and then make sure you do the evaluation so you can win Xbox, a phone, and if anybody can tell me what's the thing below that, because I have no idea, and cups to drink coffee. Really, I have no idea, so do your tag thing if you want to with the phone, and thank you very much for being here, for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the day and the reception tonight.